Welcome to the Showcast, a series of candid conversations from film festivals and film markets everywhere and the film world at large, presented by The Film Verdict and hosted by yours truly, TVF's resident professional cinephile, Micucci. Today I bring you a conversation with filmmaker Loïc Tanson, director of what has been defined as Luxembourg's first Western movie, The Last Ashes. The film is a modern Western set in Luxembourg from the early to mid 1800s and tells the story of a woman who returns to her native village under a new identity and looking for revenge against those who harmed her and her family. And there's so much to talk about when it comes to this visionary movie, including the origins of this project that blends universally resonant themes, genre movie structures, while drawing on history and folklore of Luxembourg. We reflect on all of this and also find out more about Tanson's journey prior to the making of this movie and the impact of his formation as a film critic and film editor, as well as contemplate on Luxembourg's current film industry and whether he believes that Luxembourg is indeed a cinephile country. Lots to talk about, so let's get to it. Fire up an Audio Teeny and listen to the audio waves as they fly through the air. This is the Showcast. Hello, Loïc. Welcome to the Showcast.
Hello, Matt. Thank you for having me.
It's a real pleasure to have you. And I wondered whether we could begin, though, before we start talking about The Last Ashes, with a question to just break the ice. This is the first time we talk, so I'm also curious to find out, what is your earliest memory of cinema? One that, when you think back to it, you realize might have led to your decision to pursuing a career in filmmaking eventually.
Oh, wow. That goes back to, I think if I'm not mistaken, I was like 5 or 6 years old. First time I remember going to the movies. My father took me at the time to see a movie that I revisited ever since a lot of times, and that was Top Gun.
Top Gun.
It was in 86, I think. I saw Top Gun on the big screen in an old cinema that doesn't exist anymore. I was just stunned by the fact of being in front of that giant screen and seeing all those planes flying around. So that was something for me that got me started with cinema, and that ever since I went back. And the second memory that would further that would be in 93. I started going a lot to the movies and alone to the movies. I was 12 years old and I went to see Jurassic Park. So that was equally the same kind of experience. And I saw it back to back. Didn't go home right away. My mother was worried, but it was important to me to go back and see right away a second time, because I was so astonished of what I saw, and I just wanted to have the experience right away the second time. So
both films you mentioned are obviously spectacular movies. So it was the spectacle of cinema that initially drew you to it.
Initially, yes, it was. It was the fact to discover the huge screen of the cinema and to be kind of immersed into the action, into the stories as well. So it was, on the one side, as you said, a spectacle, but on the other side, it was the emotions and the particularity of cinema to be able to travel through different kinds of emotions in a small amount of time. So that were like the two main things that drew me to the art form of cinema in the beginning, as I said, very young.
So let's talk a little bit more about your journey, because correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but before you eventually made your directorial debut, you worked as a film critic, a journalist, and also as an editor. Is that right?
That is right, yes. I did co-direct 3 short films in the meantime, but film criticism was one of the means to an end, if I could say it in a way that wouldn't be negative at all. It just gave me the opportunity to see a lot of film, to remain a student of films in a sense, and to earn a living, which is quite important in what we do, to be able to earn your life doing what you want to do. And it took me quite some time. So I've been a film critic for 20 years, and for 20 years I was able to see between, I would say, like 3 and 6 or 7 movies a week and review them. So that gave me a hell of a lot of a baggage to work with and to analyze these movies and to get a sense of what we were talking early on, to what draws you to cinema and what is the kind of cinema you want to do and what is the voice you want to have if you ever get the opportunity to make a feature film. So I was very lucky 5 years ago when Samsa Film and Claude Baringo, the producer, approached me with the idea of doing a Western.
Yeah, excellent. So we'll talk about The Last Ashes, like I said, later on. But I also wanted to ask you, much in the same way, do you feel like your work and experience as an editor has helped shape your approach to directing in significant ways?
I came to editing because to me it's the ultimate way of writing the movie again and again and again. For the short films I co-directed with Thierry Besling, we wrote them and we directed them together and we edited them together. So it was always important for us to have the means to reinvent the movie at every stage. And I was lucky enough to work with other directors later on and edit their projects and to get a feel of how important editing really is and how you can really shape a movie in the editing room and give it different perspectives or even give it different voices. So that was a very, very important stage in my life, in my experience, to be able to work as an editor, even working as a screenwriter as well. I mean, it's all the different stages that really help you to shape your vision in the best way and more precise way possible. So it was kind of like going through film school all over again, which is really nice because to me, cinema is like we're learning every day, and I'm constantly learning. I'm now in the process of preparing a series I'm going to shoot in March, and I'm very happy and very eager to continue that learning process. So yeah.
Sounds exciting. So let's talk about The Last Ashes. And let's first talk about the story, because there may be some people out there listening to this podcast who haven't seen the film yet. So if you could just introduce the story, first of all, and tell us a little bit about it. What's The Last Ashes about?
So The Last Ashes basically is about revenge. But not only, but it's a revenge movie set in the Western genre. So we are in Luxembourg, in the heart of Europe, which is a very small country. We are in 1838, which is 1 year before Luxembourg gained its independence. The country came out of 3 consecutive famines. There was nothing to eat around. Everybody was drowning in poverty, except for one small village in the northern part of the country, who lived in a very authentic way. The family that ruled that part of the country is called the Graf family, which is a very patriarchal family. And they have their own set of rules, a very pious community. And in that community, there's a little girl called Helen, which at the age of 12 manages to run away from there. And she comes back some 15 years later to take revenge for everything that happened to her when she was a child.
There's obviously lots of questions that I want to ask you about in terms of this film, but the obligatory follow-up question is, what is the genesis of this project for you? How was this idea born?
The idea came from the producer, Claude Waringo, who has been one of the pioneers of Luxembourg cinema. He's been producing movies for over 30 years now. And he always had this dream to produce a Western with all the tropes that brings with itself. I mean, the lonesome rider, the horses, the big vistas. That was the dream he had. And he always wanted to do this in Luxembourg and to have it tell a relevant story to Luxembourg as well. So he talked to me 5 years ago together with screenwriter Frederick Simon, and we set out to tell a story that's true to that idea, but in the meantime also has the ambition to kind of subvert the genre a little bit and to make it relevant today and to make it relevant to Luxembourg today.
Interesting. So taking it from the top, we talked about some of the films, or 2 of the films at least, that drew you as a child. But were you a fan of Westerns, and have you been a fan of Westerns right up to the filming of The Last Ashes?
Yes, I have been. I mean, we were talking between the ages of 6 when I saw Top Gun and 12. I watched a lot of movies at home on videotapes at the time and on VHS, and there were a lot of Westerns going through that recorder. So I've been a huge fan of the Western genre. And when they approached me with that idea, I really couldn't. In the beginning, I thought they were joking, because doing a Western in Luxembourg was not only an ambitious idea, but could have been a very fearful idea as well, in the sense of when you say Western, you talk about a certain budget that has to be raised to do that movie. And you talk about the responsibility to stay true to a genre that has been around for quite some time and that has such a mythical side to it that I really didn't want to let the genre down as well. So it was a dream come true in that sense, yes.
I have a fair idea of how you're going to answer the next question because I watched the film, but you mentioned subverting the genre, the Western genre as well, with The Last Ashes. How do you feel you were able to do that?
Yeah, different kind of ways we tried to do it. The first that comes to mind is it is set in Luxembourg. It's not set in America. It is not set in the Great Vistas. It's set in a small valley in a forest, basically, with a fort on top of the forest. So you have a real fort from the Middle Ages which is very contemporary at that time to Luxembourgish history from the Crusades and so forth. So this does give you just visually and aesthetically a different kind of feel to what a Western could be when you see a fort that has been built out of stone and not out of wood in that sense. Second element, which is, if you see the poster, it comes to mind right away. It's that it's a female-led Western. So the main protagonist is a girl and then a woman coming back from America to take revenge here in Luxembourg. So those were the two first things that came to mind. Then we have the treatment of religion, which was very important to us as well. And the side of mixing up the Western genre with a kind of a fairy tale aspect of it, which was to me something that was very close to my heart and which in my mind gives something different to the Western genre.
Let's talk a little more about the protagonist of this film. Like you said, she's a strong, unique female protagonist. When we look at the canon, the Western canon, it's still very much attached to masculine figures, the John Waynes and the Clint Eastwoods, whatever era of Western we choose to talk about, But yeah, so talk to me a little bit about what she represents and also share with us some details about casting the role.
Mm-hmm. It's not the first, and it won't probably be the last Western that has a female-led protagonist. We are not pioneers in that one, for sure. But it was important for us in the sense that it was a story that was supposed to be about the strength of the protagonist in itself. And I personally grew up with two elder sisters and my mother. I can tell you I've never seen such relentless and powerful and in the same time gentle beings than those three. So those were like the three role models that I kind of drew from for this movie. And it was very important to me to stay true to their characters as well and their strong characters, which they have. So that was one of the important things. And it was also very important for us to tell a story about the liberation of everybody in a sense. But the question you asked for everybody, how can you be free? What does it mean to be free? And what does it take to be free? Be it for men or for women, be it for children or for adults. So that was the other part. Thirdly, it's about revenge. And I watched a lot of revenge films, and some of Westerns are driven by revenge as well. And it was very, very important to us to show the absurdity of revenge in a sense, without giving away the plot and the ending of the film. It was very, very important to have this kind of absurdity of what it takes to take revenge and what the price of revenge. About the casting, Sophie Mousel, who plays the main part here, I met Sophie when I was preparing the film, and I didn't know her before. She had some parts here in Luxembourg. She played in a series that you can see on Netflix that is called Capitani, that was produced by Samsa Film as well, where she played the main protagonist as well. When I met her, there were two things that struck me right away. First one was that she completely captured the character of Helen, who's called Una when she comes back later on, because she captured the struggle of this character and the inner child she's still struggling with. So that was one of the things that was very, very important to me. And the second one is that apart from being not only a very passionate actress, she's also a very, very hard worker. And she made it perfectly clear that she wanted to do all her stunts herself. So she spent a lot of time training with horses and later on doing all her stunts for the battle sequences as well. So that gave a lot of authenticity to the film and to the character of Una as well. So that was two main reasons why she was cast in that. And it was a brilliant collaboration because she was so tough and she went through everything. I mean, if you've seen the film, she has a lot of stunts and she has a lot of things that are very, very physical that she has to do. And on top of that, she managed to capture the emotions of Una in a very specific way.
That's pretty impressive. And what a great presence on the screen. I thought that she was such a powerful presence for The Last Ashes. Returning to the story of the film, you did talk a little bit about it. There's a fusion of history, folklore, and cinematic expression in this film. And because you co-wrote the screenplay for this movie. So I wanted to kind of ask you whether that was a challenge to maintain a balance, or did it come natural to you?
I think in the beginning it was a challenge because you're always hesitant to mix genres in a way that could be too extreme. But we set out to write a tragedy from the beginning. We had the set of rules that we stayed true to. We wanted to tell the story in a very linear way. We didn't want any flashbacks, for instance, which was one of the main rules. As we set out to do this, we stayed true to what we constructed for ourselves are the rules of the Greek tragedies. So we stayed linear in that sense, and we tried to go into the folklore, but not too much, not to mix up genres, not to become too unreal in that sense, but to still have this authenticity that you should have when it's about period drama. The main focus was always, and we were talking about Sophie Mousel and the actors, the main focus was always the actors. It was in my head from the beginning as we started writing an actors film, a character-driven film. So that was very, very important to stay true to that, to have all the characters to be very individual, to have very specific traits, and to be very present on screen as soon as they appear. So that was, I think, for us, the main focus here.
And talking about the themes, we did mention that this is a film that really revels in, I guess, the tradition of the Western, but also subverts it in significant ways. One of the ways in which it does, I feel, is also in its representation of the community that we see being very patriarchal. And then there's a female protagonist who's very strong and kind of rebels against it in very significant ways. Now, was this another aspect of the film that was important to you in terms of the themes to explore?
Yes, it was. It comes back to what we were talking about before, about what inspired the story of the film, going back to my mother and my sisters, and showing how perseverant they could be. To me, they are women in the sense are much, much stronger than men out of my point of view. That's why there's a long birth scene as well in the film, which is like it's a one shot of about 4 minutes with a birth scene where you don't actually see the woman. She's hidden behind the curtain, but you see it through the eyes and the expectations and the pain the men have following the birth scene. So that was something to me very important, to show the resilience of women as I have come to get to know them throughout the so-called strength of men that is so fragile and so superficial most of the time, but it's so deeply anchored in our culture that it was so important for me to take that genre, which is a very male-driven genre, the Western, as you were talking before. You named John Wayne, you named others. So in that sense, yes, it was important to take that freedom and to stay true to our perspective and to what we wanted to tell in that sense.
There are two other aspects that I want to highlight about this movie and that relate to the style of the film. One of them, of course, is the cinematography. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. But I wanted to kind of ask you a relatively simple question. Maybe you'll pardon the simplicity of this question, but the film's introduction was shot in black and white before continuing in color. Any particular reason for that?
The reason was simple. The film is split in two. It starts in 1838 and it continues 50 years later after about half an hour. And as I said before, we tackled it as a Greek tragedy. So it's linear in a sense, but I wanted it to have a different feel. I wanted the first part to be a world without color, to be a world that is colder, a world where everything is smaller, where everything is enclosed. The aspect ratio is different. It's almost square-like. So you feel contained in a different way. And hopefully it does reflect on the way not only you see the film, but that you feel the film as well. So it was a very simple decision in the fact that we really, really wanted it to be as expressive as possible in that part. And the second part to open up the screen and to go into the visuals that we know from the Western genre and the cinemascope in that sense.
Yeah, and another thing that helps, I think, and this is the other thing that I wanted to highlight, is the general sound design of the movie, but also the music, which sometimes, blends with the spoken dialogue in really fascinating ways. I mean, what was the work behind that? I'm sure that this was another aspect that was particularly important to you watching the film.
The thing about cinema, which is so great, is that you have so many different means to tell a story and so many elements that come together that you can shape and form to tell the story in a way that you want to tell it. So you talked about the cinematography. Nikos Velta, the DOP, did an incredible job of just doing what we set out to do and being true to the ambition we have to make this look as Western-like as possible and to come as close to an ambience that cannot be questioned and that is just very expressive as well in that sense. And the sound design went into the same way. I mean, you have when Ari McFerry, which did the soundtrack, it's a group, a music band that never wrote music for a film before. So it's their first venture into movie making. And they were very, very open to adapt their style, which is more of an electro fairy tale music, to the Western genre. I gave them a lot of references, and we talked a lot about movies. We talked a lot about emotions. We talked a lot about expressiveness and about the role of music in film. As far you were talking about how it can blend with dialogue, how it can take the place of dialogue, how it just how it is a character of its own, and the whole sound design has just been incredible. I mean, the work we put in there, everybody who worked on there from Philophone here in Luxembourg was so incredible in what they gave to the movie and how they just gave another dimension to the movie. So I'm very happy that you mentioned the sound, because it was something that was very dear to our heart.
And also, I don't know if you agree, but it gives it like a more modern twist, because when we talk about Western, maybe we go back to the past. But this is a film that also feels like it was made today,
Yes, it is. And that was one of the things we tried to do as well, without being anachronistic, to have it feel not like a movie that has been done in the 50s or in the 60s, but to have it feel like a movie that has been done today, be it from the themes or the issues that it's talking about, or be it from the way it has been made. The music does play its part in that. That's true, yeah.
I'm aware that, we've been talking for quite a bit now, but it's such a fascinating film that I just maybe wanted to wrap up our thoughts about it by asking you another question that kind of also draws on your experience as a film critic and as a lover of movies. The word revenge has come up a few times in this conversation, because the film it is a revenge plot, What do you think it is that makes the revenge narrative structure so timeless and so universal?
I think it's a very universal emotion, the idea to be attracted by the possibility of revenge, or to make things right by yourself. And it can be something that's very fascinating to see and to follow emotionally as well, because it is a struggle and can be a very arduous way and a very physical struggle as well. But as I said before, to me, to Fredrik Simon as well, the screenwriter who worked with me on this, it was really, really important not to come out of this movie and say that revenge should be the way to go. It was very, very important to, with all the violence that is in the film, that you come out of it and that you see kind of the ambivalence of revenge and the absurdity of it in that sense. So that was what we set out to do. And in that sense, I think you have a lot of revenge movies that you come out of and you are kind of happy that the character did what he did. And that was the feeling that we absolutely wanted to avoid in this one.
Yeah. Again, this has been such a fascinating conversation. I could talk for another hour probably, but let's avoid doing that for our time's sake. But I did want to end also because, this is quite a significant film. I mean, we talked about the fact that first of all, it's a Western movie from Luxembourg. I've also seen it defined, and probably rightly so, as Luxembourg's first Western movie. But just in general, right, what are your feelings about Luxembourg's film scene, and how do you hope that your movie can contribute to its development and evolution?
I think that the Luxembourgish film industry is developing in a very fascinating way. You have loads of directors coming up who have now done their first or venturing into their second or third film. Luxembourgish cinema, in that sense, is finding its own way, is finding its way out of the small territory that is Luxembourg and venture into the world and have some international exposition for the stories we want to tell here. I think it's going to develop further on. It's not my place, I think, to say or to talk about what place The Last Ashes has in that Luxembourgish scene. I cannot tell it. I mean, the film has come out 3 months ago. The reviews were great here. Everybody who saw the film was really, really open and kind to talk about it. So it was a great experience. But as far as to compare it to other things that have been done here, I think it's neither my place nor my time to say it. I think other critics might be better at that job than me, or even historians when they look back in years to come on the evolution of Luxembourgish cinema. If The Last Ashes has a role in it or not, that I really cannot say. All I can say is that in the next months and years, there are movies coming out from Luxembourg from different directors that are personal dramas, that are historical films as well, that are genre films as well. So there's a lot coming from Luxembourg, and it's going to be, I think, very, very nice to look forward to it.
Yeah, Luxembourg is a small country, but I'm completely impressed by some of the films that have come out, particularly in recent years. Would it be fair to say Luxembourg is a cinephile country?
Yes, it is. I mean, going back to, we were talking in the beginning of the interview, we were talking about the childhood and films I saw when I was a child. And Luxembourg's cultural life developed over the last 30 years. In the beginning, I mean, I went to the cinema like once or twice a week, even as a child, because it was one of the things that you could do here. I mean, as you said, it's a small country. I mean, we had one of the highest frequencies in visitors in relation to the population in the world, I'm thinking that time in the 90s. So people went a lot to the movies here in Luxembourg and still do. So it's really great. So you do not only have the movies that are coming out from everywhere, from every country internationally, you also have a cinematheque which reviews and which plays movies from the past as well. So it is a cinephile country, and that's what's making it fun to make a movie like The Last Ashes, which is in itself, for us as well, as we made it and conceived it, was kind of a voyage through the history of cinema as well. And that was really, really nice to see people react to this, because we had a lot of input coming from the audience. We had a lot of questions to ask about movies from the 30s, 40s, and 50s that are kind of referenced in the film and that they really recognize. So that was really, really nice.
Right. It's a universally resonant movie, but at the same time, it also draws from the history of Luxembourg. And I think that's equally important, because, it's a film from Luxembourg. So it's only right, and it feels right that it should tell a story from Luxembourg too.
That was very important. And the language played a great role in this as well, because the language we developed for the movie is not the language that is spoken here in Luxembourg today, but it's a language that was spoken at that time. So it's a mixture of that time and today to make it understandable for the audience here in Luxembourg. But it does sound very differently from the Luxembourgish of today. So that really played a big part as well for the side of the identity of the country as well.
Very last question. We are recording this interview relatively close to the end of 2023, and you did kind of hint at some exciting projects in the new years, but is there anything, any kind of swirling ambitions, any thoughts in your head, or any projects like the one you mentioned that you will pursue in 2024 that you could maybe share with us a little bit?
Yes, there is. It's a series, a true crime series that I'm shooting in March. It's 4 episodes of 50 minutes about 4 true crimes between 1902 and 1910 in Luxembourg. We did a lot of research, very specific research about 4 cases that we're going to explore. It's called Marginal, so marginal. And it's really about the beginning of the crime brigade in Luxembourg. So it's something that is, again, set in the past, but it's something that's going to be very, very exciting to go about in the new year.
Oh, it certainly does sound exciting. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Loïc. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Loïc Tanson about The Last Ashes, an exciting modern western from Luxembourg, well worth checking out. And stay tuned for more upcoming Showcast conversations coming at you real soon, courtesy of The Film Verdict. Till the next time, this is Matt Micucci signing off. See you soon.